Here we go. I left my home. To join the army. That day I left. My mama cried. She thought that I would surely die. I left my wife. Standing at the door. She knew that I would die at war. I left my son. Laid in the yard. That little boy. Him start to ball. Oh me. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Outside and Musta, where we use the opportunity to sit and have an open discussion with ex-service members of the JDF who served with distinction, had commendable service throughout their time. This evening, I'm happy to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel retired Col Anglin. I specifically did not ask for a bio, because I know that the bio itself may not be a true story of, it will have the facts, but will not truly tell and allow us to appreciate and understand who Lieutenant Colonel Anglin is. So, sir, welcome, and how are you?
Oh, thank you. I'm very well. Very relaxed and enjoying retirement, if you can call it retirement.
So I can see, sir, usually they say, after the first day, right after your ROD, you start to look a bit younger and fresher. In some people cases, the gray hair, them swap out back for the black ones, a little bit of energy. And also possibly knowing that in 6 months' time or so, we don't have another BFST to do. So,
well, I'll tell you this, the compliments, truthfully or not, have been coming in with regard to how I look much younger. Not surprising, because I think, as you just said, we said that's where everybody was left.
Yes.
The JDF kind of thing. But as it relates to the BFST, while I might not have that to do, I still do my physical. So I get up every morning, Monday to Friday, and I do my little jogging. So
well, that's
that
good
part
to
of
hear,
it is
sir.
still going. Yes.
That's good to hear, sir. Good to hear. All right, sir. So to kick things off and get the ball rolling, sir, we'd like our viewers and subscribers to have a true understanding of who Colonel Anglin is and where it all started. So I like to ask my guests to let us know, where they're from, what was their family life prior to joining, before we get into the meat of the matter of their service.
Right. Well, I originated from Trenchtown, right in the heart of the ghetto there. I was born at Victoria Jubilee, but I grew up there as a young boy. My mom and my dad, and other relatives, uncle particularly. And so I used to run around in the gullies down at Trenchtown when I was very young. Mm-hmm. I would have moved from that community to a number of other communities. Olympic Way, Yaka Avenue, and Cinnamon Crescent. I used to live on those two streets. Up that side, I would have been exposed to the politics of that area and the war in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s that used to exist up that side. I would have gone to Seaview All-Age School, which is on Olympic Way, and I would have left from that school. I passed my common entrance exam from that school, where I ended up in Kingston College. Spent 5 years there, moved to Spanish Town, Thompson Pen in Spanish Town, Lariston, left from there, and ended up in Seaview Gardens, where my parents finally got a house, and I spent a number of years there. I would have joined the JDF in 1981 when I was in Thompson Pen. But I'm a product of the ghetto, if you can call it that.
Well, so based on what you've said, you seem to have done an early reconnaissance of these eras prior to joining, because
Yes.
to start down in West Kingston and then go further up into St. Andrew South, and then all the way over to Spanish Town, and then your family moved back to Seaview. You I guess prior to your days of patrolling, you would have been very familiar with those spaces.
Indeed.
But you joined in 1981. And prior to joining, though, because I interviewed a couple of other ex-service members who would have joined probably a couple of years before you. And what stood out from those discussions that we had was the 1980 elections. So you weren't in the services then. But where were you in the 1980 elections, what they call, one of the bloodiest elections that we've had? And what was that experience for you?
I was living in up in Tower Hill, as they call it, just a little bit off Olympic Way, Yaka Avenue, and Cinnamon Crescent, as I mentioned subsequently. I would have been a part of all of that war, that conflict between Hill Avenue and the Mall Road people, and the people from up in that general area, the Waterhouse people, the Bay Farm Road people. I would have been exposed to all of those groups, being very careful going down what's the name of that street again? Off Olympic Way, on the other side, which was, I think, where the JLP side was. So up the PMP side, which is where I was living, couldn't venture over. I would have been exposed to gang violence, shootings, killings, people running through my home, running from one gang, using the home as a transit. I would have been exposed to, at that time, soldiers coming to my house, searching premises for people. I would have been exposed to police also passing through, killing a couple guys in the process. And I myself personally was caught out once because I ventured a little too far down onto Olympic Way and over on the other side. And so because I came from up top, those guys would have wanted to try to do some harm. Thank God that didn't eventually happen. And the school that I went to was on Olympic Way, Seaward All Age, on the other side of Olympic Way, of course. But at that time, I guess as a schoolboy, you could walk a little bit freely on Olympic Way while you're in your uniform anyway. So I was exposed to the 1980s election and the violence. I think Tower Hill, if I remember history correctly, was one of those eras that was the last to sign a peace treaty after the elections, because the conflict was very hot up that side.
Boy, I didn't know that you had communities signing peace treaty around that time, So that for me is new. But
well, it wasn't anything of predominantly official.
Anything grand.
Yes, but I guess the people in the community and the guys eventually decided that enough was enough. And so there was an arrangement to have peace.
There you go. Yeah. I guess at that point in time, we didn't have a political ombudsman who could interject in a lot of these affairs of some sort.
No, not to my knowledge. I don't remember any such person at all.
So, what age were you when you joined the Jamaica Defense Force, sir?
My birthday is December, and I joined in November, so I was 17 years and 11 months roughly. when I joined, just a little bit over a month before my 18th birthday.
So your parents didn't have to write no letter to say,
They
I
actually did,
release this
because
man?
they actually did. I wasn't 18 as yet. So that was required, and I did get a consent from my parents.
But what was your feeling like though? Because to release their 17-year-old son so into the care of the army, were they in favor of that decision of yours, or they were the ones who sent you?
Actually, it was my decision. At that time, I was living in Thompson Pen in Spanish Town, in another volatile area again, up Thompson Pen, having problem with down the road, Old Road, they used to call it, still call it Old Road. As a matter of fact, before I even get into that, joining the army, that time I was in church, and I remember one particular day, again, because I was coming from up the top, I ventured onto Old Road, which is a JLP associated area. And in heading out to Spanish Town Hospital side, I was accosted by a number of guys who dragged me down into a lane, pushed me up against a wall. And of course, some very long knives were pulled out, ready to do some puncturing of my system. Asking me while they held the knife, who you, where you come from, that type of thing. Of course, I was in church, as I said, and I used to play the music at the church, and especially when we go on street meetings. I wasn't very far from Old Road, was one of the areas where we used to play. And so I couldn't say, well, you guys don't know me. I me come from up at the church. There's some man where I'm play up at the shop up there. So you guys don't know me. And at that time, there was a guy who was from the area that I came from too, but he was familiar with everybody, so he could walk both sides. And I saw him passing, and I called him, see Febby, if you don't believe me, ask Febby. And so they did. And yeah, Febby, well, hey, I don't know you, man. You know, see, I got this from up a church. And I guess that was probably how my life was saved that day. But I was in Thompson Pen when I joined the JDF. I would have sought to work for a year or so at West Indies Synthetics Limited up in Twickenham Park there. But I was there pondering around, not being very happy with where I was, what I was doing. Because when I was at KC, I was in the cadet. And so the uniform thing was all a part of me. And the military was really what I was looking forward to as a means of a transition from being a cadet. And so being at West Indies Synthetics for about a year, I kind of got bored. It wasn't really what I wanted. And so I said, I'm going to try at the JDF. And I spoke with my parents. They gave me their blessings. And I tried out for the JDF. In that year, I was taken in November 1981, intake 43. It was a little bit strange for some people because I'm short, 5 feet. And so as a short person, it was a little bit surprising by some that I made the height requirement. Don't know if it was because of the results I got on my exam at the time, my entry tests, that consideration was given. Right, but I did join up in November 1981. Yes.
I'm doing the rough math here, sir. So you joined in 1981.
Right.
So how many years of service did you give the Jamaica Defense Force, sir?
So I left at my birthday, subsequent to my ROD, 30th December 2021. I would have made it 40 years, 1 month and a couple of days of service to the JDF, full service.
Full service.
Right.
So could I safely say that at the time of your ROD, you were the most senior soldier in the system?
I was the most senior serving member in the JDF at the time when I retired. Yes. Yes.
All right, sir. So I like to find out what the experience was like, going through recruit training, because we've seen our recruit training has evolved over the years. So what was your time like? And I assume you were trained at Newcastle.
I did train in Newcastle.
Mm-hmm.
Going up to Newcastle, it was cold. The journey was cold in the truck, in the back of the truck going up. And all I could see was this place that looked like some prison or something. You're going up, and the more you're traveling, it's more, at one stage it came close to you, then it just disappear at a distance again because of the winding road and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
When we reached Newcastle, there the training officer was on the square. It was a rainy day. Ex-Captain Zalukos Thomas, nicknamed Zalukos, and he was on the square under a ground sheet, looking very, very, very menacingly at us, very scary. And you wonder, what the devil did I get myself into? But I spent 19 weeks in Newcastle. It was an experience. The training was good. The training was rough. The treatment in some instances was humiliating, abusive to some extent, and certainly at the standard that we have now in terms of how you relate to recruit, it would have been considered abusive. I actually got my nose burst right here at the tip, right here. The mark is still there.
Still there.
Still there. As a result of aggravating my training sergeant, who was having a drill parade, and I guess I wasn't getting the drill right. It was hard to get the whole cadet drill out of me. And I suspect all the other cadets that have been in Newcastle have heard those stories. The cadet drill was not what the military wanted, but it took a little while to get out. And on that particular day, while rehearsing for a drill competition, I wasn't drilling as all my sergeant wanted. And in anger, I guess, having spoken to a couple of us a few times, he just swung his space stick and it caught me in my face. Something I haven't held against him, to be honest. I don't know. He eventually came down and became my company sergeant major at one point. And we are good friends today, I must admit. So I haven't held it against him. I speak about it a few times, certainly in his hearing. And I'm trying to remember if he had apologized. I don't remember, but I know he regretted it. He regretted it, but it's not something I hold against him. I got rough treatment. The first 12 weeks of Newcastle was of such that you don't walk. Everywhere you go, you have to do your little light jog. So you jog here, jog back. If you're going to the bathroom, once you step out of your barrack room, you have to jog, go to the to the outside bathroom. Mm-hmm. I would have slept in the cemetery a number of nights. And I'll tell you this, I slept there on punishment and I slept there willingly. So to get away from the instructors that I had up there at the time, I would just sneak out of the barrack room and go and sleep down there, because for the first 12 weeks, you couldn't walk and you didn't get a chance to properly sleep unless it was on a weekend and they say, all right, sleeping parade kind of thing. So we were up many nights without sleep. And so, the recruits were very tired. Mm-hmm. And those of us who were brave enough snuck off down into the cemetery and caught a few hours. I would have done the gas chamber and the gassing training that is still going on, I'm sure. No, certainly when they were in Newcastle, I don't know what is happening with the new training environment now, but I suspect the recruits are still being gassed. And I survived. But I think one of the other high point of my recruit training was that at the point when the training was really very rough and abusive, I kind of joined forces with another intake member of mine. And so we were going to run off the hill, because recruits were running away at that time. And the night when we were to run off the hill, my squaddy got caught his afraid, and was there if man, you know, I'm not you go again, you know, that type of thing. And so we didn't eventually go. I guess my years subsequently in the JDF have proven that decision was the right one.
Well, sir, based on what you said, that wasn't your decision, you know.
Oh, definitely. And so I stuck out the training. I ended up winning 2 awards when I was in Newcastle. I won the academic award, and I also was the runner-up best recruit.
All right, well, that's good to hear. So how many recruits started your intake, and how many completed the training?
I remember about 120 recruits started the intake, and we end up with about 95, 96 of us passing out. Okay.
What was the passing out parade like, in terms of the support that you got from your family, community, or what was that event like?
It was good, very good. My parents came. A female friend of mine who was close to me came. The lady who I thought at the time was my girlfriend, she didn't come. I guess that she was still in between deciding whether she's really my girlfriend or not. And I had a number of other friends who came. It was big, normal passing out in Newcastle. We got a lot of people coming for the recruits from all over. Most of them, you know, recruits normally come mostly from countries. So when somebody from a community is passing out, is almost the entire community wants to come. And the buses would have been chartered. The food would have been cooked as if it's a picnic, and they would come on after passing out parade. The square would have been filled with all of the people setting up. Their loved ones would have gone over and, you know, meet and greet and socialize and all of that. And we had a normal recruit passing out dance in the night. But it was really a relief to pass out on the square. It was an exceptional moment for me, being the runners-up recruit, going up to receive 2 prizes. And just the euphoria at the moment was really overwhelming. You know that you endured, and you're having this moment of success. It was really a very good feeling. Yes.
So after you left Newcastle, which unit did you join first?
I came straight down to Bravo Company 1GR. That 1GR was in Monique at the time. And I remember when the day when we went down, it was an afternoon that we reached Monique. And when we were assigned, I was assigned to 3 platoon in Bravo Company 3 section. I remember we had caravans at the time. We didn't have accommodation built as they are now. We had caravans with double bed. And I remember walking into the caravan, and a couple of the section guys were there. The corporal was on his bunk lying down, and there was some other troublemaker. I ended up in a section that had soldiers like 3-4 years or more in that section. So it wasn't a young section. It was relatively senior soldiers. And I remember walking into the section, saying good afternoon. And my next question was, who is the corporal? Because everybody they didn't have on their top no uniform. I didn't know who was the corporal. And I asked, I'm looking for the corporal. Now, you know, I'm a cadet, so I know the rank and I know how the structure is. And those guys were a set of jokers and troublemakers. So one private job, oh, was you, those dirty slime recruit. They used to call us slime at the time. Come on, where are you, man? You come in here asking for the corporal. Where are you? I'm the corporal. Who you want? What do you want? I'm saying, no, I don't think you're the corporal. I don't think you're the corporal. I'm looking for the corporal. And I mean, they started to raise what do you call it now? Excitement and all of that.
Mustering start.
Yes, slime recruit coming here. No, it's not the word, mash up, etc., etc., etc. But he eventually identified himself, and we started to build. I ended up being taken care of by those guys. You know, I don't know if it's my worth that they eventually recognize, or I just naturally fit in as an old cadet kind of thing. Somebody would have done well in Newcastle, that type of thing, but I fitted in very well. And it, as a matter of fact, my platoon was one of the successful platoon, the most successful platoon in the company, because of how we operated at the time.
How long were you at 1GR for?
So I came down in March 1982, and I stayed at Bravo Company. It was the only infantry company that I served in, meaning the not Alpha Bravo Charlie. Out of all of those, Bravo was the only one. I did spend some time in HQ, but that was when I was transferred to the headquarters. I think that was about 1985, because in 1983, December, I went to Grenada as part of the deployment.
Yeah.
But I was at Ex-JDF at that time as a young soldier. But I think I went to Grenada. I'm trying to remember, so long ago, but I came back down from Grenada and ended up at HQ-JDF shortly thereafter. So I left from 1GR to go to Grenada in 1983. So between 1982, when I came down in March, and when I went to Grenada in December 1983, I would have spent that time at Bravo Company 1GR.
What was that experience like in Grenada? Because I know that was a very historic moment for the country, the region, and for the JDF in terms of its regional deployment. But what was it like operating outside of our geographic borders?
Well, obviously I was a young soldier, so I wasn't very exposed to the significance of these things in any significant way. First time traveling overseas, certainly from the JDF. We went to the Grenada after, many people say after the fighting finished, because we didn't end up in an hostile environment or a combat situation or anything. We went there, and our first mission was to do guard duties at the prison, where they had some of the revolutionaries that they would have captured from the incursion, who were at the prison. And then we subsequently went to one of the small islands, I guess just for experience or so. Nothing much was happening over that side, but they were doing guard duties. I'm trying to remember the name, something like Curacao or something like so, in Grenada. And I spent a little while there. I don't remember the exact period. My duties over there was to be the chef for the section that over there. So, oh, young married man, just coming over. Yeah, man, you're a married man. Go in the kitchen, that type of thing. You must know how to cook because he's a married man, kind of thing. Thankfully, my mother did a good job of that. So that was my role over there. But it wasn't anything exceptional, except that it was on a foreign style. You get to know people, you get to know places. You drove around the island a little. Didn't spend much time over there. As I said, when December came back in March.
All right. So as you said, then when you returned, you went to Ex-JDF.
Right.
You were still, your trade was still that of an infantryman when you went there.
So shortly after I come back, I would have been selected to go to the battalion headquarters. Ex-Major Milton Edwards was the chief clerk at the time. And I spent a very short time there as an attaché to the battalion headquarters. And shortly thereafter, I went on a clerical course. So it was from the clerical course that I was selected to go to HQ-JDF, again, because of my performance on the clerical course. At that time, headquarters only look for the brightest and the best of the best out of the clerical course to go to the headquarters to work as a private soldier. So that's how I ended up at headquarters at that time.
And so now we get along that interesting journey of you as a clerk. So how was that though? Because and the different units that you served in at the different appointments as a clerk, sir.
Right. So I started as a private at HQ-JDF. My first job over there was at the recruiting office. So I used to assist a female corporal who was working there to recruit persons to join the JDF. I eventually got promoted. I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but I suspect persons saw something in me. So within a relatively short time, myself and another private who was also on the clerical course and did well, by the name of Ret'd, both of us would have been selected from the course to work at HQ-JDF. And we basically got promoted very quickly at the same time to the rank of well, I left there as a sergeant. He would have left as a corporal, but we quickly made it to corporal at the time. Would have done exceptionally well. Major Valmogon was chief clerk at the time, and he was not an easy nut to crack. I'll tell you that. A very hard worker, a very meticulous person, know the clerical field, know the system. And so if we shone under his responsibility, then it meant that we were doing well. And so was the case. I left HQ-JDF, oh Lord, I remember the year, as a sergeant, and went to 1GR as the all-room sergeant. I think it probably was somewhere around 1987, 88, 89, somewhere around there.
Okay. And go ahead, sir.
Sorry. So in terms of clerical units I would have served in, so I went to 1GR as an all-room sergeant. Shortly thereafter, the chief clerk was retiring from the JDF. And so I acted as a chief clerk for a little bit until I was given the appointment. So I would have moved up in the rank from sergeant right up to warrant officer at 2 at 1GR. I then left 1GR to 2 and went to 1 engineer regiment to take up chief clerk duties there. I spent a couple of years there. Forgive me, I don't remember the dates. I didn't do the research. And then I left from engineer regiment and went to 2GR, where I was promoted to 001 as a chief clerk there. I left from 2GR and went to HQ-JDF as the Force Chief Clerk at the time. I wasn't the most senior 001, but I was the chosen one at the time. And I went to HQ-JDF 1993. I remember 1993 because that was the year my mom died. And at the time when I was to be selected, I was home to see the CDS, Admiral Lewin at the time, an interview to take up the job as chief clerk. And while I was at home waiting to go on the interview the very next day, I got the news that my mom had passed that day. So I remember it clearly. I spent about 4 years at Ex-JDF, runabout, and then I was transferred to the military museum, the Jamaica Military Museum. Then Lieutenant Colonel Rocky Mead was the COSSB at the time, in charge of building the museum at that time. It was just coming on street, maybe about a year and a half into it. And so
yes, sir. But before you continue, sir, because the museum component of your service is also very, very important. And I wanted to get more into that as well. But I know that a lot of us, I'm an infantryman, sir, so I know the clerical field is not one of glamour from our side of the fence. But what is it about the clerical field that you found very interesting, and also, you know, what is it from the clerical field that you got a lot out of that sort of helped to shape how you approached leadership, man management, and all those tools that are required,
right,
as a senior member in the system?
Well, I will tell you this. I've always said that for me, the clerical field, the joy from it was really administering to the welfare of our members. But I spoke earlier about being the best of the best when I was on the clerical course, and that's how persons were being selected, certainly from Ex-JDF Chief Clerk standard. And I kind of have that philosophy about the clerical field. So when I joined the clerical field, my expectation was to rise as Force Chief Clerk. That was my objective. That was my goal. And so I always sought to do my clerical duties to the best of my ability. It gave me a really so much of a fulfilling feeling, knowing that you're taking care of persons' welfare. They're out there on the road, on the front line, or wherever, and they are relying on you back there to ensure that their welfare is in order. And so I took on that responsibility with a deep sense of commitment, and executed it accordingly, and required of my staff to do the same. It also kind of gave me a kind of probably selfishly a superiority complex kind of thing, because then I know that I was in charge of a certain significant level of responsibility and action that affected people, and so I used to dictate things. I mean, as a chief clerk, you're responsible for the administration of the unit. Yes, you work with the CO, you work with the adjutant, but everything falls right back to you as the hub of the unit's administration. And that kind of caused me to feel very, 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 very superior and, you know, very rewarding.
Well, sir, there's an air of confidence. Some people say cockiness that comes with clerks, but I can understand and appreciate that, because if you serve in that, if you work in that trade for an extended period, you become very familiar with policies and regulations and systems. Right. And if you do it very well as well, then that even adds. So, you know, I can understand and appreciate that as well, because I've learned quite a lot throughout my career from clerks as well, especially as you move through the ranks and you start to deal with other, you know, pieces of information and documents that are of a confidential nature and also need to be done a particular way to reduce any scrutiny and to also ensure that there's transparency with how you communicate. And it's a part of command as well that is very critical that some persons take for granted.
And the other side to that, is also the fact that from an administrative point of view, you are the man. Everybody turns to you for advice, for guidance. And I'm really talking from the CEO right down to the young officer who just joined the JDF and don't know how to do anything administratively, and the other ranks. So you kind of become that very important figure in the unit that everybody turns to. And that in and of itself is very rewarding, knowing that because you're doing your duties so well, people just don't find you because you are the chief clerk. Because part of my history is that even people outside of my unit would seek me out for advice and guidance, because of the knowledge I had and the manner in which I would have gone about doing things. So I wasn't a selfish person to say, well, you're not in my unit kind of thing. Go and talk to your chief clerk. I give advice and guidance to whomever is seeking it, wherever you come from.
Across the board, because one of the things I've heard, is that, when you reach chief clerk status, and you're in the mess, you hardly buy liquor, because everybody want a piece of advice or information from you. So you're one of the most welcomed individuals in the mess when you walk around,
That is true. That is so true. Yes. Yes.
And also, the respect that comes with the trade also has to deal with that aspect of you having to manage confidential information as well, because it impacts persons' careers also.
Indeed.
But back on point, sir, with the museum. So can I safely assume that you were one of the founding members of the museum?
Actually, no. Museum actually was in motion a year and a half or so before me.
Okay.
I just picked it up where I got it. And as it turned out, at a point where then Lieutenant Colonel Meade needed somebody on the ground to kind of just take the thing and run with it, while he, from a distance, would have given guidance, notwithstanding that he's occupied with more substantive responsibility, CEO and all that. Mm-hmm. So again, I suspect it was because of how well I would have carried on with things. I had a boss at the time who didn't really intervene much in what I was doing. I just need to keep him informed and get on with it, which is exactly what I did. And so when I got it, it was up and running. The library certainly wasn't in existence at the time, but a plan that was on the table. But as it relates to the museum itself, I would have taken that and just continued to move with it, taking the guidance that I would have gotten from then Lieutenant Colonel Meade and other commanding officers who subsequently took over the unit. I remember moving to Engineer Regiment with General Meade when he moved from SSB to Engineer Regiment. We carried the museum with us, and we continued to build it out. We put the name of the museum out there.
And I want to ask, sir, because as you're going down that road as well, at the time when you were posted and arrived at the museum, give me a picture as to what it looked like when you were there and at the time up to the time when you left. So that evolution and development and change and transition. what were the things that were taking place? Because a lot of persons don't understand and can truly appreciate not just what the museum brings to the JDF, but the work that takes place down there. And all of this was done prior to us having the fancy curator and all of that sort of thing.
Of course.
Can I get a breakdown of that, sir?
Poor little me, who had no knowledge, no experience, know nothing about museum or library for that matter. I was sent down there to manage an entity that was just being built out. The military museum wasn't something that was favorably in the mind of many military persons. And so when I got it, it had a name, Military Museum, but it didn't have a name per se in the JDF. People didn't know it. Many didn't know it. Many who knew it weren't interested in it. And so I had to develop programs, strategies to get units to buy in and to participate in the activities of the museum. We had just one hangar that we were using with a few artifacts. And so we had to acquire additional artifacts. We had to display them in a particular way in keeping with museum standards. And we had to generate programs to sell. So during my tenure, when I took over, we didn't have people visiting the museum per se, and especially schools. But during my tenure, and certainly up to the point when I leave, we had schools on a regular basis, weekly, a number of schools over every week. And civilians coming to the museum because they started to hear about the military museum. A lot of people didn't know the military had a museum, JDF had a museum. But we had to get that word out there. And that was before we even got a professional curator eventually. So we had all of that planned. Of course, we were also working with the Institute of Jamaica, who would give us some guidance and support accordingly. But outside of the tours that would have come on, we would have also reached into corporate Jamaica. We would have put on events that when people come and see what the museum was offering, they were willing to support it. And we got a lot of that support from corporate Jamaica. We had events Wine and Cheese events, for example, is a signature event for the military museum. We had fundraising events because funding was not readily available. We got some donations that we utilize internally at the museum, but funding internally was not in existence much at the time. And so we had to be creative and innovative. And we did some amount of fundraising effort and utilize those funds, reinvested into the entity. So when I left, we had schools coming, we had outdoor activities that were developed, weren't there when I started. And we developed those that could continue to entice and entertain the youngsters when they come. We started to participate in International Museum Day, which was a worldwide event on the 18th of May, if I think I remember the date correctly, which also brought in a number of awareness. We got the media to come in. So it was a big sell over the years, building from strength to strength, to the extent, and I'm not boasting, but I've heard it so many times, that the museum was one of the main attraction at Upper Camp. So you had people coming just because they heard about the military museum.
And I can understand and I appreciate that, sir, because I remember at the point when I joined, and we had schools visiting Upper Camp, we were limited to one GR having a display, and then the kids going down to Air Wing. That was it. Yeah. So when we had the museum that played an integral role, that brought that raised the standard and for what we had to offer to the general public. And
Right.
I know it was some serious hard work. And as an infantryman, I don't think I could take on that one. So kudos to you and your staff and your leadership then.
Yes, and I tell you this, I can't not recognize the efforts of the other members of staff who themselves, outside of one Corporal Thomas, who when I got him, he didn't know anything. We eventually sent him on a librarian course, and he helped to build out the library. But everybody else were novices to museum activities. But because of the collaborative approach and support that I got from them, we were supermen at doing everything. So a lot of the development that went on down there, we actually did it ourselves.
Yeah.
What we didn't know, we went and asked, and where we could get assistance from, we got. But we were all non-museum type persons who were building out a museum. So kudos to the team that I had at the time.
Indeed, sir. So what was the next move in your career after the museum, sir?
Well, thankfully, when I went to Ex-JDF 1993 to take up the job of Chief Clerk, in seeing Admiral Lewin at the time, I had also done a Quartermaster Commissions board. That was part of the interview, but I was told at the time that I wasn't going to be commissioned just yet. He wanted me to be his chief clerk. That was 93. I wasn't commissioned until 2011. Right? That was somewhat 8 years, up 9 years, near 9 years after. Yeah. I was at the museum at the time, still acting as a curator down there, and I was commissioned down there. Shortly thereafter, maybe about a year and a half or so, I was eventually given admin company as the OC. Would have acted on a couple of occasions, but I actually got the job substantively in some time thereafter. The years are missing me. And I spent about a year in that appointment.
And I don't want you to move from that appointment, sir, because you know it's an important point I would like you to speak on as best as possible, because having served as an enlisted member, and then when you got your quartermaster commission, but what is important is that you got the opportunity to command. What was that like, being in command?
Extremely rewarding. Another rewarding appointment. I'm a people person, so and I like to get down there with my men, show them that what I need them to do, I can do, and so I sought to lead from the front. I think that approach won a lot of admiration and support from them, to the extent where when Brigadier Meade was CO SSB, we used to have subunit competitions, and for about 2 years successively, admin company was a champion company. That nobody remembers in any history when was the last time that happened. And a little boastfully, that happened with a quartermaster commissioned officer. But that was because of the approach that I took. I was supported by my team, my company members. I made them feel, in my view, as if they are part of a cohesive unit, and not one where you have a taskmaster up top dictating everything and, pressuring them down below, as the military persons like to use the term. And so because of that, they rallied around and they would go that extra mile for me, and I did get a lot of that. So it was very rewarding as OC admin company at the time. Very rewarding.
It's good to hear, sir. So so after admin company, what was the next move, sir?
I was asked if I didn't want to stay at admin company, and when the job of OC Med came up, yes, I did want it to stay, but there was a need at my company that my superiors thought that I could fulfill. There was a, well, they needed somebody senior enough, and not just in rank, but also, I guess, in age, considering the caliber of professionals that we have up there. Yeah. And so I was asked to come on Lt Col. Didn't spend long there. I spent a year there, and started to make some significant inroads there. I think one of the biggest highlights of my time at admin company was when we put on a health fair. Had been a while since anything like that was done. And we went down to the cricket field and we invited the media, and we had a lot of medical entities coming to display in their tents and stuff like that. And that was a significant high point at Lt Col, something that we wanted to continue, but then I left. I think somebody tried it once and it wasn't as successful. Also, I had started to get a serious level of support, in my view, from the persons there on the officer side. They found somebody who they could talk to, relate to in a particular way. Again, I am not this type of person who is unapproachable. And so it was easy for people to come and talk to me. The soldiers themselves were very appreciative. Some people who felt that they were cut off found a new leash in life. And even, frankly, even up to this day, I have people from Lt Col coming to say, "Sir, boy, just can't stop talking about you know, sir. You know, sir. You start this, you know." And see it just a continue. And it feels good when you get those feedback from people, because of how you dealt with them and the value that you not just place in them, but show them that they have. And that made it very rewarding for me, very rewarding. I left Met Company and then I came to HQ-JDF as the OIC records. I think that was in 2017, December 2017. Well, February 2017, sorry. I took up the job of OIC records. Spent a couple of years there. Would have acted a couple of times as SO1, J1. Would have done a couple of stints as the SO2 purse. I would have acted for a while as OC, HAD, HQ-JDF detachment. And then I subsequently moved from there down to the Inspector General's department.
And before you get into your time at the IG office, sir, because military records, sir, is I'm always in amazement as to the volume of documentation that has to pass through that office, and the small but limited staff that you have, and how the expectations are so high to ensure that there's a level of accuracy there when it comes to each member of the JDF. Right. You know, what was that experience like at MilRec?
Somewhat rewarding, and I say somewhat because I inherited a system that had a lot of manual approach to it. Information publishing part to others were still being written on paper. Maybe 200, JFB 200. And I wanted to kind of change that. I started an electronic database where we started to record, and it still exists now. I'm not sure the extent to which it's being used, but it certainly still exists. Where we started to record soldiers' information on that so we could retrieve it very quickly, because it was frustrating to me every time somebody requires information. We have to go and pull a file and search through a significant amount of paper to get information. When if we had it online, you could just put in some search criteria and get it. I didn't get the level of support that I was hoping from the system. And when I say the system, particularly the IT professionals in the system. And understandably so, I'll tell you, because CISC at the time, everybody wanted the help of CISC with everything, and they didn't have a lot of people down there to provide that level of support. And so I had to be using network to kind of get a particular database written, independent of a structured system. Because when you go to the formal channel, you hear, you might have to go through the brigade, the unit headquarters to get the sign off, because the work was falling in a kind of control mechanism where, because of the amount of work and the limited amount of people, the work had to be ordered or prioritized. So that was frustrating for me. We had adequate staff, military and civilian. As a matter of fact, at one point, I thought the military records department was a little bit top heavy. There were 2 officers. We didn't have veterans affairs at the time. We had 2 officers. We had a warrant officer. We had about 1 staff sergeant and about four sergeants in that little department over there, with obviously junior staff and civilian staff. But there were other entities in headquarters, and I think this was during the time I was OC, that was deficient of leadership at the senior NCO level. And so I took it upon myself to transfer some of my senior people to areas like the registry at HQ, so that we could have that level of supervision, that it was a corporal running the registry, for example. But I had a department over there, pack up of all sorts of senior people. And I thought that was poor. It was something I inherited, and I thought to kind of balance things a bit. But I do agree with you. I did get a system where Part 2 orders they were trying to automate it. It was at a particular stage, maybe about 20% of the way. That should have downloaded into an automatic uploading of a database, but again, the resources from CISC was limited, and so it started and it stopped. But one of the other things that we were able to move on with was that we were able to set up a system through CISC where certain information, 001 bins would have created a mechanism where my department could just go and put in some search criteria, and we could get certain information that we need to search the system for. But I wanted to move it beyond that, to not just what was on the HR system, the Infinium system, but one that captures information via Part 2 orders, service information that were still being documented on the 200 over there.
Yes, sir. So after that then, sir, so IG department.
IG department. Colonel DePass was asked to kind of carry the department investigation cell for a little bit. He was on his way out, so he had a kind of 6-month spell down there. And then I was asked to take over from him on his retirement. That was fulfilling. I'm not going to say it was overwhelmingly fulfilling, but it was fulfilling. I was really getting into the investigation thing, and the reviewing of investigations. I was overloaded, I will tell you that, because I was substantively meant to be chaperoning the cell down there. But then there was also an audit cell that I was given the responsibility for, but it wasn't really supposed to be a part of my responsibility. But we didn't have anybody to lead it or to oversee it. And so I had to, with two persons, kind of chaperone that cell. I think I probably spent a little more time on that more than the investigation side, because then you had a lot of audit boards coming through that required reviewing. And I think I prefer the investigations because the audit boards were a nightmare.
Yeah. It's very technical for audit boards. Audit boards can be very technical, whether it's actually an account or
other accounting functions. But I'll tell you, it was one of my biggest challenge, and not because it was beyond me to review the boards. It wasn't, but because it almost was like a cycle. The same thing you review this time in this audit is the same thing you do. So you recognize that there are problems across the force, and I did understand the problem. We had a lot of people who weren't even audit board trained running accounts. So there you could appreciate the problems. And then we had people who were meant to be overseeing these accounts and taking certain actions, weren't doing that. As a matter of fact, I tell you truthfully, not even the audit boards themselves, that they are meant to review before they are sent to HQ-JDF, were being properly done. And so it took a lot of time to go through those and to send back the feedback and to do the follow-ups and all of that with two members of staff, basically. I hear it is split now and the job is separated and they have more staff. So kudos to that change. The investigation, of course, that basically get you to know about all that is happening out there, because all the investigations that are done across the force would come through my desk for review and commentary before they are sent upstairs. And so I got to know a lot of the things that were happening out there, but I've given some recommendations moving forward how to correct some of those. Some were acted on as recommended, some took a different result. But all in all, and then of course there was the times when I would have acted as IG, would have been on technical inspection.
Yes.
Right. Going out into the unit, seeing what is happening out there, seeing the challenges that are out there, and the little that was being done to correct some of those issues. So it was rewarding. It was rewarding, but certainly that setup was very demanding on me. I would have spent a lot of long hours there going through these things on both sides of the fence, and when I acted, so it took a toll. It took a toll. I don't know if it was that responsibility that finally said, "Hey, enough is enough." The body was really buckling, you know.
Well, from what I've seen, sir, you went from one extreme to the next, in the sense that, you know, when you were the chief clerk, everybody wanted to pick at your brain, to get some information and advice. But one thing we all know for sure, persons that work at the IG department have very little friends, even if they're good friends before. I've seen you many times at the officers club sitting over in a corner drinking by yourself. And I know when you're at military records and other areas where you served as a commissioned officer, you had a good group in around you.
Yes.
But everybody was quite hush and tight-lipped around persons that work at the IG department. Through no fault of your own side, it's just that it comes with the job.
It comes with the job. And they know if they say something that IG department need to act on, then we are going to act. So people were very, they close off the lips. Yes, indeed.
Not even hearsay, sir. Not even hearsay people come to you with. Not one thing, sir.
Exactly.
But we're wrapping up now, sir. But a few things I'd like to get from you before you leave. You said earlier that, you know, when you went into the clerical trade, you saw your mission was to become the Force Chief Clerk. But at the end of your time, sir, you were left at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. What was that like? Being told that, you know, that's the next big step. And I'll say it here. So it was a safe assumption that when you went to IG and took over from Colonel DePass, then that vacancy was there.
Yes.
And then it was just for you to put in the work. With nobody had any doubt that you would not do and you could not manage, but that feeling, so.
Indeed. The rumor, one and two rumors were out there.
That was the only rumor you could accept at IG.
Accept, right? And those would have followed from the fact that Colonel DePass was also promoted. But it wasn't an expectation. I'll tell you that, because I know that I was on my way out. I knew that I was coming to that point, my 40th year kind of thing, and so I was looking out. So it wasn't like I go there and expect to get promotion to Lieutenant Colonel, but it was refreshing. It felt like that final recognition of all that I would have endured throughout my military career. My aim when I joined, and certainly when I joined the clerical field, was to become a chief clerk. That was it. I wasn't even looking to be commissioned. Colonel Price was the one who came to me, Danny Price, and asked if I was willing to accept a quartermaster commission, or to be recommended for a quartermaster commission. I said, sure, sir. I was the chief clerk 2J at the time, and he was acting CO, and he made a recommendation. I did say that I went to the CDS, or the chief of staff then at the time. Was it CDS? Yeah, CDS. In 1993, as a result of being on the Officers Commission Board, the Quartermaster Commissions Board, I was told that he was ready to commission me. 9 years passed. A lot of persons said, yeah, you can't forget about that. As a matter of fact, one particular quartermaster officer, a friend of mine, said it to me, Michael, you can't forget about that. That not happen again. Don't even worry, think about it. But knowing me, when I left Ex-JDF and went to the military museum, I kind of felt after the first couple of weeks, because, you know, that would have had a negative effect on me. I think I am still in history as the only chief clerk who would have been deported. I keep using that word, from the job at Ex-JDF laterally. And I felt really, really low for the first couple of weeks. But then I came around to myself and said, you know, thankfully General Meade is the type of person, he gave me the space. So I felt as if I could own this thing at the museum. And I did. I owned it. I felt comfortable as my little area that I am doing my thing. Nobody's bothering me. I report to my boss. I'm happy with what I'm doing. The CDS would have come down here at the time. And I remember one particular time, General Anderson would have come down here at a function. And when he walked around and talked to some people and looked around, he came over to me and he held out his hand and he shook my hand and said, well done, Michael, well done. That was a very, very fulfilling and rewarding moment for me. So when I got commissioned, I felt happy because, again, I had stopped looking forward to being commissioned. 9 years would have passed. Nobody else would have waited that long, kind of thing. And it came. I suspected and I was looking forward to being promoted to the rank of major. But that was it. I thought I would stop there, like many others before me, until the pass break that ceiling. And so I saw that there's a possibility that that might happen. Wasn't necessarily working for it, because I'm 40 years in the JDF. I know the JDF. Don't look forward to anything. Just do your work and move on. Whatever else is to come will come. So I wasn't one of those people who was looking forward to saying, yes, man, Lieutenant Colonel is going to be coming. And when it did, it just felt like that icing on the cake kind of thing for the number of years that I would have been here, all that I would have done, all that I would have endured. So it was that culminating moment for me, or at least one of, because then the next one would have been Armed Forces Day last year, when, again, history being the first quartermaster commissioned officer to command a parade of that size, or probably a parade, any such parade, being a parade commander. So that again was another.
I can say,
moment.
sir, that more than likely your sergeant from recruit it must have been proud of you.
And I would have seen him. He has mentioned it, but quite a number of other persons have done so. I see now that since that parade, 2 other quartermaster commissioned officers have been given parades to command, which is good. It means it is showing that there is a lot of depth, experience, and caliber within the quartermaster rank. I would have been approached by a number of soldiers who says, sir, but I might tell you, really make me proud, you know, man, from the parade day. And so through my army career, I've been a kind of quiet, silent role model to a number of persons. Some have come forward and expressed it directly. Some have expressed it to other persons, you know. And I suspect if you do a survey around the JDF, probably when I was there, maybe not now, you would have asked, who is that role model person that you look up to? I think my name would have come up there a couple of times. And that makes me feel good.
And I'm glad you raised that point, sir, because from your standpoint and having served a long career with distinction, you would have come across quite a few individuals all across the force, all gender, all ranks.
Right.
At any point in time, were there any, maybe one person or quite a few persons that you would have identified who were exemplary in how they conducted themselves, how they executed their functions, that you would have seen as, whether or not deliberately as a mentor, but somebody who you could look up to, that you sort of patterned or learned quite a few good things from?
Indeed. And more than anybody else, I think Valmore Gowans stands out for me. He certainly was my role model in the clerical field coming up. And certainly as OIC record, I think he would have equipped himself very well over there. His wealth of knowledge about the JDF is something I admire. I really admire it. Let me not even use past officers. Brigadier Mason is one other person that I look up to. He has a particular approach, not necessarily a very fancy and appreciative approach by many, but at the end of the day, it gets the job done, and it gets it done to a very high standard, And I've always admired the manner in which he goes about doing things. Sometimes a little bit rough, yes, but at the end of the day, you know you're going to get quality, you know, and he's one of the persons I really look up to. Naturally, General Meade. General Meade, his approach and his the way he thinks and rationalize things is just awesome in my mind. Any problem you give him, he has a comeback for you, and he does it without any effort. But he because he's somebody who thinks outside the box, and always encourage people to think outside the box. As far as he's concerned, he will tell you he doesn't even see a box, so he thinks very wide. And I kind of have gotten to appreciate that, because what it is telling me, don't limit myself to certain parameters. Think endlessly, as wide as you can. Be creative, be innovative. Just if you want to do something, just tell yourself it can be done, and then you go and find a way. Don't even worry about who have tried before, what they would have done. Just think about it and try to come up with an approach, thinking even in a basic way, the most stupid of way, whatever way, but just tell yourself that it can be done and seek to find that solution. And so I appreciate him a lot for that type of mentality. And I look upon him also as a role model in that respect, yes.
And penultimate point, sir. 40 years in the JDF, and I remember at the beginning of our session here that you seemed as if you got married very early within the first 5 years of your service.
Yeah.
How has that been? How have you managed to create that? I don't like to use the word balance, but to manage that thin line that exists between stability at home and getting the work done in the military.
Right. Well, for the record, I actually got married 2 years into the Army, 1983. My wife has been a tower of strength to me. She has suffered a lot. She has suffered a lot with me not being at home. She has suffered a lot with many late nights being at work. She has suffered a lot with me taking on the stress of the job, carrying home. And I suspect like other persons, but she has suffered with that. And she has been a tower of strength behind me. She has always been there to support me. I can always call upon her if I'm at work and need any assistance anywhere. I can call upon her and she's there to rally behind me. She takes care of the family, the children. I mean, she's just a wonderful, exciting and superhuman person. And I tell people, I'm not going to divorce her. I don't want to talk loud, make she hear. I'm not going to divorce her, nor I'm going to allow her to suffer in any way because of the extent of the support that she has given me over my 40 years in the JDF. We have had our problems, yes, like any other relationship. We try to work through them, but at the end of the day, we're still sticking together. We're still sticking with each other, by each other. So it has really been fulfilling. It's good to know that you have that solid support behind you, right? That you don't have to worry about that side of your responsibility, because somebody else is there who is capable and is doing what needs to be done. And so I'm happy for her.
And how many children you had, sir?
Sorry?
How many children, sir?
Oh, I have two boys, and the final one is a girl.
Okay, sir. And the final point, sir. Any words of advice, guidance to the persons wanting to join the military, persons in the military now looking to have a long and fruitful career, and those of us who are on the cusp of making that transition to civilian life for the wider world?
For those who want to join the JDF, I would more without hesitation, and I'm doing it even now when people call me asking me for opinion, advice, etc. I recommend that they do. The military has built a particular type of personality in me, a certain level of responsibility in me, a certain level of decency in me that I don't know that there's any other organization in Jamaica that can do it as well. And I always tell people, if I was to do it over, if I was given the opportunity to do it over, I would most certainly do it again. Of course, doing a few things differently, but certainly the military, yes.
You would definitely not have thoughts of running away from Newcastle.
No, I know what it's about, so I'm going to dig in and even probably become their best recruit. For those who are in, my advice has always been, I have a philosophy that whatever you have to do it to the best of your ability. When you have to do it, or you have to do it, and where you have to do it. And if I think if person cannot follow that philosophy, don't be an eye servant. Do your job and do it professionally, do it efficiently as best as you can. I know some time ago there was this thing about 80%. Trying to, if you do as much as 80%, then it's as good. I'm not an 80% person. I'm a practicing perfectionist. I practice every day with whatever I do to do it to the best of my ability, the fullest of my ability. So I'm not into just doing a little bit and then, so I spend a lot of time going slowly because I'm not a very rushed person. I don't quickly in order to get it done and move on to something else. I am going to make sure that it is properly done to the standard of 100%. I don't know if a lot of persons can do that, but that would be my recommendation to them, because if you do that, then you won't necessarily have it to go back to do over again. For the persons who are about to leave, just as I was told when I was there as a young soldier, start to think.
So I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit, sir. We're losing your voice slightly, sir.
I'm gonna tell them what I was told when I was young. Plan for civil life. It's 4 months since leaving, and I can tell you I have started to experience the roughness, the hardship out here, not having the backative of the JDF behind you. So they need to prepare for that, medically, physically, and financially, because it's rough out here and getting harder by the moment. I am presently working up by Curfew Place, and I am almost every day becoming more and more aware of ex-service members who would have left, didn't do very well in the JDF, and are having it very difficult out here in Silver Street. Yes, you might get another job that you might have to do equal amount of time that you would have done in the JDF just to survive. So plan from early. It's almost like these financial people telling you to plan for your retirement from early. Invest. Do that, not just financially, but otherwise. Think about the other things that you will need. Treat it like a retirement plan and put it in place and start to execute it from your there, so that you are not caught out when you come out here.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for those wise words. So it was good to have sat down with another ex-service member such as yourself that served a very long and fruitful career. I've learned quite a few things about you. For a clerk, I didn't know that you went to Grenada, sir. But yes. Most persons who join and come and see us know of you as a chief clerk and in the clerical field. Yes. Prior to you becoming commissioned. So it's good to see that you've had that wealth of experience, even though short operationally, but that's still quite a lot to do on overseas deployment. And then to see you move through the ranks and then also to be commissioned and to reach the rank of Lieutenant Colonel and to also be the parade commander for one of the ceremonial events within the JDF for its calendar year. And to see how well you've taken on and made that transition to civilian life. Again, so thank you very much. I know I'll be seeing you around at Curfew Place with the Jamaica Legion and their events. And I would like to say, I'd like to wish you all the best moving forward, sir. And I'll see you around, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to share. It has really been a rewarding 40 years in the JDF. I hold no grudges for nobody in the JDF. And like I said, if I was to do it over, I would have chosen the same path. Thank you again, Marlon. Thank you very much.
All right, sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Left, right, left, rider, left, rider, left, rider, left, rider. 1, 2,
G4,
1, 2,
G4, 1, 2, 1, 2.
When I say 1, then you say 2. When I say red and white, you say blue. 1, 2, red and white.
2.
When I say 3, then you say 4. When I say BT, you say more. 1,
4,
red and white.
4,
3,
4,
BT.
4.
When I say 5, then you say 6. When I say just 4, you say kicks. 1,
2,
red and white.
blue,
3,
4,
BT.
4,
5,
6,
just 4.
6.
When I say 7, then you say 8. When I ask how you feel, you say great. 1,
2,
red and white.
blue,
3,
4,
BT.
4,
5,
6,
just 4.
6,
7,
8,
how you feel?
great.
When I say 9, then you say 10. When I say we're going, you say again. 1,
2,
red and white.
blue,
3,
4,
BT.
4,
5,
6,
just 4.
6,
7,
8,
how you feel?
great.
9,
10,
we going.
again.
9,
10,
we going.
again.
9,
10,
we going.
again.